We're now to Karthik to tell us more about opportunities in green chemicals. Karthik.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita, for the introduction. First of all, a very good day to all of you from sunny India. With the record heat wave going on, going green is really a hot topic for us. So this session comes at a good time. It's my absolute pleasure to be a part of this session. I'd like to thank both Prue and Thibaut for some very insightful and engaging points that they raised. I will definitely reach out to both of you to get a bit more details and see how we can adopt that in our conversations in India. What I'd like to do today is basically share a perspective on opportunities in green chemicals. It's a hot topic with rapid developments and significant implications for industries across the world. So while we might have worked in India, we might have worked in the Middle East, you'll find that this is one of those areas which your clients will also be thinking about. And I hope through today's session to just give a quick overview, show some of the kind of work which we have done, and also raise some pointers which you can take forward to your clients and start engaging in a discussion on looking at going green opportunities through green chemicals. Could I request you to go to the next slide, please? I'd like to start off by defining green chemicals. What are green chemicals? To us, they are basically chemicals produced through renewable, bio-based routes and act as alternatives to traditional fossil fuel-based chemicals. So they should basically meet three checkpoints. They should be derived from living organisms such as different types of crops, wood, algae, enzymes, microorganisms. They should offer a renewable and sustainable alternative to the chemicals currently based on fossil feedstocks, and they should be driven by decarbonization and environmental impact. So just to set context in everyone's mind, conventionally key bulk chemicals, which are then further processed and used to make a large variety of specialty chemicals and fine chemicals that you use in your everyday life, are primarily made from non-renewable petrochemical routes, either from the crude oil naphtha route or from the natural gas route. And the aim is to see if these key large volume chemicals can be substituted through green chemicals so that there's a substantial impact on the world. Could we move to the next slide, please? So don't be scared by the slide. I'm not going to take you through the chemistry or the names of the products here. My objective here is to say, if you ask what's possible in green chemicals today, the answer is a lot. We are already having a large number of biorefinery platforms, many of them commercially proven for producing green biochemicals. I'm highlighting the sugar chemistry value chain as being the best developed and commercialized, but there are a lot of innovative new ideas, technologies and approaches being tried out to make chemicals through the CO2 platform, syngas platform, which is basically carbon monoxide based. There is, of course, green hydrogen, which is a hot topic being talked about in Europe. In countries like India, green hydrogen based chemistry is being looked at to see if we can substitute some imports of petchem products like ammonia with this. And the important point is, these are not niche products that we're talking about making. We are talking about making high, could you just go back to the previous slide? Yeah. High volume products which you might recognize like bioethanol, adipic acid, lignin, methanol, urea, isobutane, ammonia. So these are, in millions of tons, the global consumption and production of these chemicals. So these are the kind of products where shifting to a biochemical or a green chemical can really make a major impact in the world. Could we move to the next slide, please? Anita? Yeah. So the question comes, what are the key applications where green chemicals are really going to see adoption? The fact is that green chemicals are a little more expensive, at least currently, across different applications. Some of them may or may not be the right fit today. However, we have seen that in the last few years, green chemicals have become much more commercially viable and have started seeing adoption in certain specific applications. The largest market is, of course, bioalcohols. Most of you might know that ethanol is used in the production of biofuels, basically blended with gasoline. This has different reasons in different countries for adopting. Some adopt it for climate friendly reasons. Some, like India, adopt it because you import your crude oil and ethanol can be produced domestically. So it gives economic freedom. There are other essential chemicals which can be derived from this, and it's a pretty big market already. It's almost 10 billion already and expected to grow to about 16 billion. Similarly, bioplastics is another hot area. According to the IEA, plastic output has nearly doubled between 2000 and 2020. And a very small part of this is typically recycled. So there's a lot of demand for sustainable packaging derived from bioplastics. Currently, the market is about 6.5 billion, almost going to double to about 11 billion in 2026. But the bigger point here is that the global plastics market is about 500 billion. So a 6.5 billion barely represents a little over 1% of the global plastic opportunity shifting to biochemicals or green chemicals. So the upside opportunity is huge. Even if it goes up to say 10% over the next 10 to 15 years, we are talking about 70 to 100 billion dollars plus of bioplastics as an opportunity. Very similar story in biofertilizers and biopesticides. The world is shifting towards sustainable agriculture. People want products which do not contaminate the groundwater, which are not toxic to the farmers, which do not degrade the environment. Small markets currently about $1.8 billion of biofertilizer, about $5 billion of biopesticides. But again, a little less than 1% of the total fertilizer market is biofertilizer right now. So you can imagine what the market size would be as the biofertilizers become double-digit share of the global production. There's some niche applications also developing. Advancements in biotech, especially in genetics and protein engineering, have opened a number of new opportunities. F&B, animal feed, cosmetics, bioenzymes are taking over a larger role. Again, this is going to be a $10 billion plus opportunity in just a handful of years, with a vast potential to double or even triple in the next decades that we're talking about. Could you kindly go to the next slide, please? So what's driving adoption of green chemicals? The good news is it's a two-pronged approach. There are multiple regulations globally being formulated to drive green chemicals, but we're also seeing healthy private sector participation and interest in these initiatives. So a simple one is supply chain transparency. Those of you from developed markets like EU, US, you would know that there are already regulations like REACH, where manufacturers are required to communicate information on all the chemicals across the supply chain. So going forward, it's going to be very easy for a European supplier, chemical manufacturer, to look at the value chain and say, hey, where do I need to, look at collaborating on removal or substitution of certain, pet chem route, non-eco-friendly chemicals with green chemicals. It's going to be much more easier. But there are also large chemical producing nations like India and China who were outside the ambit of such regulations in the past. Fortunately, we find that this drive is global. If you could just go back, Anita. Yeah. Leading global manufacturers like India and China also have their own versions of REACH. Just today, I was reading an article about Turkey coming up with its own variant of REACH. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to be a global transparency in the supply chain for chemicals, which means that a European consumer product manufacturing company is going to be able to look at their global supply chain and say, where can I look at substituting some of the existing chemicals with green chemicals? That's the way it's going to be. The governments across the world are focusing on ESG, hot topic. Many countries have moved towards a carbon tax or an energy tax related to carbon content. There are over 35 plus carbon tax programs already implemented globally. We talked about net zero targets. Some of my previous presenters talked about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, again, hot topics. But individual governments, even in developing nations, are taking this up aggressively. You might be aware that China implemented a blue skies policy, which ended up seeing thousands of industrial facilities and chemical plants shut down due to violation of emission norms. So especially products like dyes and pigments are shifted to more eco-friendly dyes, eco-friendly pigments, which do not pollute the atmosphere, which do not pollute the water sources, which do not percolate into the soil. India has directed industry players to achieve zero liquid discharge, requiring recycling all effluents release. So there's already a lot of pressure on cleaning up your entire value chain. What kind of products do you buy? What kind of chemicals are you using? Balancing that against a little more cost for green chemicals. And the best part, I would say, is that there's been a major focus on manufacturing green chemicals by the private sector in India and China. Of course, we have talked about Europe, but if you look at the growing market in India and China, there are lots of large Indian players like India Glycol, Godavari Refineries, Lakshmi Organics, Jubilant, who are already manufacturing primary chemicals by the bio route. They're exporting these chemicals to US and Europe. They are growing in large volumes. They are developing innovative technologies. So it's already there. And it's just a start of the, I would say, the tipping point, because India's largest company, Reliance, has announced over $75 billion in green energy and chemicals, including green hydrogen. In Europe, especially, we understand that green hydrogen is seen more as a fuel source. But in India, where we import a lot of fertilizer inputs, green hydrogen is actually seen as an opportunity to substitute chemicals down the value chain, including making things like green methanol, green ammonia. There's companies like the Adani Group, the world's largest solar developer, announcing investment of $70 billion. That's about 140 billion just between the two companies. China is a little ahead of the curve. Players like BBCA have announced plans to make close to 0.7 million tons of PLA polymer. There are lots of companies who are participating in different chemicals like PBAT. In fact, most companies are talking about growing China's biochemical production by nearly 5 times from 2020 to say around 2024, 2025. So that's the way they're looking at it. They're looking at almost doubling every year. Extremely aggressive approaches, new innovative technologies. This is going to really change the entire global ecosystem. You're going to see imports in Africa, South America, all being driven by green chemicals. It's no longer limited to just a few developing countries or developed countries. Could we go to the next slide, please? So what's our area of expertise? What can we bring to the table? I just put a few illustrative slides that, on what we have worked with and how we can help our clients. We have worked with a number of clients in exploring green chemicals. We have a very strong understanding of what it takes to win in this space. If you look at bio-based chemicals, we have assisted multiple large conventional bulk chemical players in India. We have looked at just about every chemical in the green chemical value chain that you can think of. We have looked at it again and again. Sometimes we have 3 to 4 projects running at a time. So that gives a very strong understanding of what's viable, what's the target market, what's the kind of applications which are going to see substitution by green chemicals. We have looked at global sustainable packaging space for clients in India and internationally. We have looked at trends of adoption of bioplastics. We have studied the bio-PET opportunity in detail for clients in India and Middle East. So if you look at things like your Coke bottle or your Pepsi bottle, there's now a route to develop that bottle through 100% green chemicals. And that's going to be a big opportunity. You know how bottles are seen space, in terms of the pollution that it does. And the big part specific to India, we just want to highlight India announced a large national green hydrogen policy targeting to produce about 5 million tons by 2030. The objective is a bit to be used as fuel, but a lot to be used to produce chemicals like green ammonia, nitric acid, sodium nitrate, and further products. And we have already worked on a number of interesting projects, and we have a pretty strong understanding of the downstream chemicals. I think the main takeaway for us, at least, is that the number of discussions we are having with our clients on entering the green chemical space has dramatically increased. And we're not just talking about the India market. We're having clients, asking us, can we set up production in the US? What's the market like in Europe? In fact, I've reached out to the Cordons network for the last couple of weeks for inputs on certain aspects related to this in the US market, in the European market. So that's how hot it is in India. And I'd like to go to the next slide, please. And what can we help you as Cordons members? How can we help you take this conversation to your clients? Some of the topics you can broach with your clients are simple ones. What are your ESG or net zero goals for your company or manufacturing process? Probably you're having this conversation already. But then you can look if they're willing to talk about evaluating their raw material or chemical supply chain for ESG impact. Are they looking at a strategy to drive increased usage of green chemicals across their organization? If they have evaluated this in the past, what are the roadblocks they faced? And maybe we can help look whether some of those roadblocks have been, can be bypassed due to developments in technology, in terms of scale, where to source. Those are different solutions possible today, which were not possible just before the start of the pandemic, for instance. So this is a very different question as compared to what you would have had as a conversation 2 years back. And we are the right partner for green chemicals. We have a deep sector knowledge of the chemical value chain, especially green chemicals. We can help you pitch to companies. We can help build impactful proposals, share case studies, and we can help in execution. We have done benchmarking of value chain for green chemicals, identifying opportunities for incorporating this into your product portfolio, identifying and onboarding green chemical suppliers from across the world, helping you tie up with technology providers, etc. And we are very happy to connect with you on a one-on-one basis to explore opportunities to pitch green chemicals to your global clients. Just reach out to us. Thank you.
Karthik, thank you so much. And I like the way you're ending this, offering what you can do for the Cordons partnership. And there's lots of comments in the chat, and I see Uwe is raising his hands. We'll get to the chat. We also have to be mindful of time, but Uwe, please go ahead.
Yes, thanks a lot, Karthik. I think green chemicals would be, if it works, would be a great contribution to better sustainability. But when listening to your speech and your presentation, a question came to my mind. The question is there, we have a positive impact on the ecological part of sustainability, but what about the social part of sustainability? My question is, so that the raw materials for green chemicals and the acreage needed for the raw materials are the same as for food. So could a competition emerge here? Chemicals against food, that would become a major problem, especially for poorer countries and people?
I think that's a great question. And in fact, in the past, this has especially been asked about the US market, where, the corn-based ethanol blending was a major factor. The issue with social impact, when especially, let's say you look at India, right? I come from that market, and you say there's an increased production of, huge increase in production of green chemicals in India. How does that balance against India's food needs, right? So if you look at a lot of the sugar chemistry value chain, the typical value chains which are based on these bio routes are based on products which are available in excess in India, for instance, right? That's why it's commercially viable. The costs are low, the production is high. Fortunately, we are not talking about converting something where India is, short on. We're talking about converting things we are surplus on. In some of these cases, it's using the waste material like bagasse rather than the sugarcane itself. And it is a valid point. There is a, there is a way in which the governments need to incentivize production of green chemicals to a limit, but no further, so that it does not end up cannibalizing and causing food inflation in countries. I think that's a very valid point. I think the question is, will this question come up in 2030 or 2040 when green chemicals start to really scale up? And that's something that we need to keep an eye out for.
Okay, thank you.